Well, good afternoon and welcome to our webinar, Learn How to Use the Newly Enhanced Climate Risk and Resilience Portal, ClimR. I'm Tom Wall. I'm the Director of Argonne National Laboratory Center for Climate Resilience and Decision Science. With that, we've got a great agenda for you today. First, Quentin Cummings, who is the Climate Analytics and Services Lead at the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, will talk about FEMA's foundational role in this project. Next, I'll come back and describe some of the science behind the ClimR portal, as well as what makes it unique and what's new, some of the new features that we've added today. And then the bulk of our webinar today will be my colleague here at Argonne, Carmella Burdi, who is a Senior Geographic Information Systems Analyst and the lead developer behind ClimR. She'll show us how to navigate ClimR's most popular features, some of the new tools and things that we've added to this newest release of the ClimR portal. And finally, we'll hear from Jessica Palante, who's the Director of Global Sustainability at AT&T, who's been a long-term partner of ours and in the ClimR portal as well. And she'll describe a specific example of how to use ClimR to find climate insights and apply that information. For now, I'd like to introduce our opening speaker from FEMA, Quentin Cummings.
Hello, and thank you for joining this webinar today. My name is Quentin Cummings, and I am the FEMA Climate Analytics and Services Lead. We at FEMA are thrilled to announce this update to the Climate Risk and Resilience Portal, a groundbreaking collaboration between Argonne National Laboratory, AT&T, and FEMA, which has culminated in an easier-to-use interface, interactive tools, and applications. This innovative tool represents a significant leap forward in our ability to access and use future climate data, a crucial element in our ongoing efforts to plan for and adapt to our rapidly changing world. Understanding the challenges that lie ahead requires not just any data, but actionable information that can be informing our decisions and strategies. The Climate Risk and Resilience Portal is designed to meet this need, providing detailed, science-based insights into future climate scenarios. This will enable us to identify potential risks with greater precision and devise more effective plans for building resilient communities. By leveraging the latest developments in science and technology, this collaboration marks a pivotal moment in our journey towards sustainability and resilience. The Climate Risk and Resilience Portal is more than just a tool. It is a testament to what can be achieved when we come together, combining our resources and expertise for the greater good. We are excited about the potential of this portal to transform our approach to climate planning and adaptation. Together, we are taking a significant step forward in safeguarding our communities against the challenges that climate change possesses and ensuring that our resilient and prepared communities are ready for what lies ahead. Now, I'd like to pass it back to Tom Wall, who will discuss the science of the ClimR tool.
Great. Thank you, Quentin. So as Quentin mentioned, I'd like to talk a little bit about ClimR to introduce it. What is ClimR, first of all? Who's it for? What's unique about it? And what's new in the ClimR portal? So if you go to the next slide, I'd like to first start by talking about our research center behind ClimR, the Center for Climate Resilience and Decision Science, CCRDS, here at Argonne National Laboratory. Our focus is really on decision science and bringing world-class climate science, decision science, and other information together to provide actionable climate resilience solutions. And the goal of this really is to empower community leaders, decision makers, infrastructure owners, operators, emergency managers, and communities at large to make decisions proactively today to ensure greater resilience to climate as it changes around us and into the future. We believe in addressing climate change through actionable science-based information, so using the best available climate models and data science to present plausible future scenarios of the types of impacts that we may experience into the future and really take a science-driven approach to decision-making. We work with lots of partners, and one of the things that we've heard over and over again is providing actionable climate information publicly and for free. And that led us to launch just over a year ago, the Climate Risk and Resilience Portal, and now here today to relaunch the new version of the portal with updated features. At the foundation of the ClimR portal is high-resolution, dynamically downscaled climate data. So modeling climate for North America down to very, very local scales and using those models to project future impacts, which is what we integrate into the ClimRR portal so that the public can gain access and knowledge from this information, begin to see what the future may look like and plan proactively. Next slide, please. So what is ClimRR? This is a unique tool that we built as a sort of a 4-participant collaboration between FEMA, AT&T, the Department of Energy's Grid Deployment Office, or GDO, and Argonne National Lab. And it's really geared towards community leaders, infrastructure managers, owners and operators, emergency managers, and public officials to better understand future climate. So gaining access to peer-reviewed climate data sets to take a more data-driven approach to analysis and planning at very local scales. We stress in all the work that we do scientific transparency and easy accessibility to data and information. So on the ClimRR portal, you can find links to dozens of scientific journal articles and peer-reviewed publications discussing the science and the modeling, sometimes in great detail, of the work that we've done here and the data that's at the foundation of the ClimRR portal. We provide context for climate risk factors and information that may affect communities. So bringing together different elements of different variables from climate models into new types of indices or impact information that is more tailored to action and driving decision-making. The ClimRR portal provides near nationwide assessment of variables. So we cover the data set underlying ClimRR actually covers all of North America. The portal itself, however, is focused on the contiguous US and Canada. We don't have information in the portal currently for Hawaii or for Puerto Rico and the Caribbean, although I will say one of the things we plan to release this year is a new data set that will cover Puerto Rico and the Caribbean. So we'll have information for more US overseas territories. The portal has over 100 different climate visualizations and variables, everything from temperature information to heat index to fire weather index, which is an indicator of wildfire potential, precipitation, wind speed, degree days, and things that may be more actionable for infrastructure owners and operators. And we try to provide this information in ways that are customizable. You can create visualizations, data reports of local climate projections. We have data catalogs, so all the data can be downloaded for evaluation in external software. If you want to do something beyond what can be done in the portal itself, you can download the data. You can reference that through servers, so you don't have to store the data locally. You can just reference it in your GIS software. And providing information also from other FEMA products like FEMA's Resilience Analysis and Planning Tool, or RAPT, which has good information about communities and community vulnerabilities to various stressors and impacts. So you can start to look at how climate may impact communities at a very local level by pulling that information in as well. Next slide, please. So what is new in ClimRR? The basics of ClimRR are the same. It's the same data set that we're pulling from, but we've really spent a lot of time over the last several months updating the interface with ClimRR, and particularly how we generate local reports assessing future climate hazards and how those hazards impact or affect communities. So and as my colleague Carmella will discuss in the next section, she'll give a lot of examples walking through how you access that information and look at how a specific community, a street address, you can input a land feature, a landmark, a latitude and longitude, and get local climate projections for that specific location, and then pull in other information about where are the hospitals, where are the vulnerable populations, where are the fire stations, where are the retirement communities, and start looking at how climate may affect more vulnerable populations or critical community assets. We've also updated how we access maps, charts, and other visualizations on the platform to try to make that easier and more tailored to community-driven decision-making, as also greater information about how to interpret climate hazards and data points in the portal. So as you're going through and looking at all this wealth of information, there are insights about how to make sense of what you're looking at, how to interpret that and apply that to your decision-making needs. But we're not stopping there. So this is what we've been up to over the last several months, and looking ahead at the months in front of us over 2024. We are expecting to integrate information about inland flooding and coastal flooding from storm surge into the Climate portal, as well as a whole host of customized analytical tools and features so that you can do more analysis within the portal itself and tailor those analyses or those outcomes even more to your use cases and to your communities. And then we've been working diligently over the last several months on climate simulations at 4 kilometers. So this is much higher resolution than what's currently in the ClimRR portal. And so we'll start integrating data and information into the ClimRR portal based upon these newest simulations of future climate. Next slide, please. So what is unique about ClimRR, and how do we leverage this to help communities and decision makers look at the future and start to plan proactively? Our model is a regional climate model of North America, and that's shown in the figure there on the right-hand side. This is informed by multiple global climate models. So we pull information from the global climate modeling community into a regional climate model and do a process called dynamical downscaling. So by taking information from these global climate models, the regional climate model of North America effectively translates that information into much more detailed, higher resolution local impacts across North America. And we're modeling all the physics-based processes of atmosphere and local environmental conditions to translate that information down to local impacts. All of the data that's currently in ClimRR is based on 12-kilometer simulations of North America. So you can imagine a checkerboard or a grid laid over all of North America, and each grid cell is 12 kilometers by 12 kilometers. And that's what I mentioned about the 4-kilometer data set that's so exciting, is that when we are able to start integrating 4-kilometer data into ClimRR later this year, that'll give us a 9-fold increase in the level of detail of the data that we're able to project, which will give us even more local future projections of climate impacts. Again, I mentioned we stress scientific transparency, so all of the science, all of the modeling, all of the information of how we generate this data is referenced in journal articles throughout ClimRR, and you can access those on the portal. We look at different time slices or different time frames. So we have information of simulations run for historical time periods, as well as mid-century and end of century. So we can look at not just what will climate look like in the future, but compare that with historical climate and look at change over time. How will mid-century or end of century be different than what we've experienced historically? And we also look at 2 different future greenhouse gas emission scenarios or greenhouse gas concentration scenarios. We don't know how humanity is going to respond to the challenge of climate change and curb greenhouse gas emissions, but there are a number of good climate or good emission scenario projections into the future that we can model to give us insight in that. So we've selected 2, RCP 8.5 and RCP 4.5, as sort of reasonable bookends on the uncertainty space to provide climate projections along both of those trajectories so that we can understand some different scenarios of the future. That 4-kilometer data set that we'll be releasing later this year will be based upon what's called the SSPs. This is a new family of emission scenarios that were released recently by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And so those will underpin the updated simulations and the new data set that will be integrated into ClimRR in the year ahead. Next slide, please. So that's a ton of information. I think we should just get straight into the demo. I'd like to turn the webinar over to my colleague here at Argonne, Carmella Burdi, who's going to spend about 30 or 40 minutes walking through a lot of the new features on ClimRR. Carmella.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Carmella Burdi, and I am very excited to show you around the beta version of ClimRR. This is our newest release that just came out this past week. So at this point, I think you know why we're all here, but ClimRR is a portal which is providing future climate projections for easy access to decision makers, urban planners, emergency managers, and more. I'm not going to talk too much about the data on ClimR because Dr. Wall has already covered that, but I am going to point out where you can get some more information if you want to do a little bit more research or read a little bit more about what we're offering here. So on the home screen, which is what you see on my screen right here, the website starts with about 3 cards or boxes that depict each of the 3 main components of ClimR. I'm going to kind of go through site navigation here and show you where you can access some of our tools. But these 3 main boxes are our 3 main components to ClimR. We also have a green button here that says new to ClimR. Please click here to check out our user guide. I would encourage you to go straight there when you get to ClimR, as it is going to give you some similar information to what I'm going to give you today, but it's going to have a nice follow along guide for how to access the tools, how to go through our climate projection tool, and more. As I scroll down the page, you're going to get some more information about who we are and what we do. There's a wonderful video here with Department of Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm, where she announces the portal and gives a little bit of information about our goals at the laboratory. And then as you scroll, there's some more information about what we're hoping to do with ClimR and the data therein, as well as a little bit about our story on public-private cooperation and how we sort of came to be. We really could not have done all of this without the help of our partners at FEMA, at AT&T, at the Department of Energy's Grid Deployment Office. All of these agencies came together to put together the data and the toolkit that you're going to see here. I'm going to scroll back up and I'm going to point you to the top here to our main navigation pane. This contains all of the different pages that ClimR houses. Again, we see the 3 main components of the site duplicated in these cards down here. But I also have a Learn and an About tab up here that I want to talk a little bit more about. So I'm going to click on over to the Learn section. And when I expand this drop down, you're going to see that we have some information on climate modeling, our data, risk analysis, and resilience planning. If I click on climate modeling, for example, I'm going to get a little bit of background about the terminology. So I already saw some questions in the chat about our timeframes and our models. So here's where you can find out all of that different information and you can do a little bit of reading. If I go over to the data tab under our Learn dropdown, again, I'm going to get some terminology here that I can navigate through and read a little bit more about how a particular climate variable was calculated and what we did to display it for you all. I'm also going to point you to a link down here that contains a box folder with numerous scientific and journal publications here. This is going to be all of the science that our friends at the laboratory have worked so hard on and how they've developed their methodologies, how they're doing their analysis, and how they're providing all of this data for you all. So there's some good stuff in here. All right, if I come back up top to my navigation pane, I'm going to take a look at my About tab. If I click on this drop down, I'm going to see that we have a few different tabs here. We have some use cases, some frequently asked questions, and a news section. I'm going to click on our frequently asked questions really quickly because I do know that there's a lot of information and a lot of dense information for everyone to digest here. So if at any point you're sitting there and you're lost and you're wondering, what am I looking at? Why is this like this? Or I really want to know more about this other thing, please check out our frequently asked questions page. You're going to find our contact information here as well. And you can always get a hold of us by emailing us at ccrds@anl.gov. We absolutely love hearing from all of you, so please don't hesitate to reach out. If you have questions, comments, feedback, we want it all. I'm going to say that a couple of times today, but I hope you'll trust me when I say we really do want all of that feedback. Now, if I come back up to my About tab, I also have a use cases page here, and we've got a couple of different use cases highlighted. We have use cases on hot weather emergencies, on how tribal and territorial partners might utilize some of our climate projections, how engineering and utility companies might incorporate some of this into their planning roadmaps. So there's some really great stuff in here. At the end of this webinar, you're also going to hear a new use case on how the state of Idaho is using ClimRR and our future climate projections for their emergency planning. So there's a lot here that kind of helps you digest what you're seeing in terms of the future climate projections and how to take that data and actually do something meaningful with it. We also have a news section here that contains articles and information about what we're up to and what we're doing in the climate space. So here is also where you're going to find information on webinars and new offerings. If we're attending conferences and giving presentations, or if we're doing more of these training tutorials, all of that will be right here in our news section. This is also mimicked on our homepage here in sort of this news sidebar. And again, we're planning to use this to call out new data sets that have been uploaded, or calls for collaboration, or requests for feedback and things like that. We're also going to have a button here that's going to allow you to sign up for what we're anticipating to be a quarterly newsletter. So until that button goes live, which should be pretty soon, I'm going to ask you, if you're interested in joining our newsletter, to email us again at that ccrds@anl.gov email address. All you have to do is say, please add me to the newsletter, and we will get you on our mailing list. But that newsletter is going to be sort of, again, not spam or anything like that. We're not going to hit you up every single day, I promise. And we don't have coupons to offer. But what we do have is information on when we're going to be deploying new data to the site, or when we're going to do some upgrades, because this is a living, breathing portal, and we are going to be adding new tools and capabilities for as long as we can. So you'll get all of that in our newsletter. So again, ccrds@anl.gov. All right, so now that we have gone through sort of all of the information pages that are available to us on ClimRR, let's take a look at our three main components here. I'm going to start with our download data or data catalog section, and I'm going to click on over to that. And I want to point out that there are a few different ways in which we can get all of this data. So right now, when you first access the data catalog page, you're going to see a button here for a data catalog guide. This is going to be a descriptor of all of the ways in which you can interact with the data on our website and download it and take it with you, use it for your own research or informational purposes here. We serve this data up in a variety of different ways. We have downloadable CSV or spreadsheet files that you can take a look at, and I'll show you how to get some of those in our report generation in just a minute. But we also have all of that in a box folder that you can get to and pull down our READMEs, our metadata dictionaries, all of that information that you need to use this data effectively. We also serve up data as REST services. So this is an API that is using an Esri-based backend for GIS layers. If you're familiar with GIS, this should be pretty easy to navigate. If you're not familiar with GIS or Esri tools, it might be a little overwhelming. So that's why we've got the guide. Click on that button, but it's going to show you how to find exactly what type of data you need. And we also put all of that content into a data catalog here where you can take a look at all of the different layers that we have available, as well as get some quick links to some of the applications that we're using to serve up some of those map layers here. All right. I'm now going to move on over to our National Map Explorers section. This is one of the, again, 3 components that you'll see on the main page that make up most of Climber. And this is going to be sort of the last thing I talk about before I get into our local climate projection tool and our report generation. But this is way in which we've broken down all of the different climate variables that are available. Because, like Dr. Wells said, there are over 100 different layers. I think we're approaching 200 layers here on Climber. We've broken them out by climate variable into these web mapping applications. And if I open one up here, I have temperature maximums over here, for example. This is going to give us a way in which we can interact with our map. We can zoom in, we can pan around. We can click on an area to get a pop-up of that 12-kilometer grid cell. But also I can come over here to our layer list for our temperature visualizations, and I can see every single one of those maximum temperature visualizations for seasonal, annual, and change or difference visualizations. So right now we're looking at the excuse me, summer seasonal visualization for maximum daily temperature at the end of century RCP 8.5 scenario. And I can turn that off and I can look at a different season. So for example, I could look at spring if I wanted to. I could look at winter. And I could do that for, again, a variety of different cross cuts of the data. So time frame, emissions scenario, and seasonality. We'll get to some of that in just a minute here. The other thing that I want to point out is that we also have a list of community and infrastructure data layers in the web maps as well. And so a lot of this information is coming directly from our friends at FEMA and the Resilience Analysis and Planning tool. And I'm going to show you that in a different section here when we get to our climate projections tool. But I just want to point out that we've got a lot of infrastructure data, because knowing where we're going to see change in a climate variable, for example, is important, but it's also just as important to know where, for example, our nursing homes are, or to know where we have mobile home parks or things like that. There's a legend here that we can turn on to make sure that all of the layers that we're showing are giving us some good context. We can bring that. And then we can turn on all of those layers and turn them off as needed. So I'm going to show you one last component of the National Map Gallery, and then we will head on over to our local climate projection tool. But one thing we do offer in here is a PDF printout of the data that is within Climber. So if I come on over here to our summer seasonal again, and I come over to the side panel where we have our temperature summary tool, I can put a point on my map and I can get a summary of the data that is available for that point. So right now I just clicked one grid cell, so it's giving me one grid cell's worth of data. But if I come back here and I start over and I draw a little box here around DuPage County, I can come in and I can summarize that for my entire county. I grabbed the whole state of Illinois, so apologies there, but you can see we've got quite a bit of grid cells here, and we'll be able to pull that PDF for us. All right, so that is our National Map Explorers. And now without further ado, I want to get on over to our local climate projections tool. So this is the newest part of our ClimRR beta, and we're super excited about this because it's going to provide you a more guided way of looking at some of this data sets. So the National Map Explorers are sort of the fire hose of information. It's all there. This is more of a curated view in which we can find, maybe one or two things at a time, pull in PDF reports, pull in CSV or spreadsheet reports, and bring them out with us. So when I first come to this page, we are going to see that we are greeted with a little pop-up here that is going, or a carousel here that's going to give us some information on how to use the local climate projections tool. If I scroll through this, it's going to give us information on the map viewer, our location search, and our stats view, which I will show you all how to use in just a moment. If I hit close, this will go away and it will pop back up the next time I visit the site. If I don't want it to pop back up, there is a do not show this button again toggle that you can put on so that it won't appear when you come back to visit. All right. What we're seeing here is a map of the continental United States, and there are a few different ways that we can navigate this. We can pan and zoom around our map. Right now, I'm just holding down the left click and dragging to sort of drag my map around, or I can use my mouse wheel to zoom in and out. I can also use the plus and minus navigation tools up here in the top to zoom in or out. And I can, try to find the area that I'm looking for. Alternatively, if I know the area that I want to look for, or the place or the county, I can use our location search up top here and I can type that in. So I'm going to type in DuPage County, Illinois, which is where Argonne National Laboratory is located. And if I click, or if I start typing, you can see some suggestions pop up, and I'm just going to click on DuPage County, Illinois. And as I did that, our map zoomed into the 12-kilometer grid cell that represents the centroid of DuPage County. And we updated our charts and we updated our graphs and tables here in the local climate projection tool. There is a default set. So when I first sort of do my location search, I'm given a default of maximum temperature and heating and cooling degree days. But I'll show you here in just a minute how we can swap that around and how we can look at different climate variables and how we can add and take away from our map here. But first, I kind of want to orient us to what we're seeing here on the page. Beyond the map, we do have some buttons here that I want to go through with you really fast. The first is just some quick links to our user guides. So our data catalog guide that I highlighted earlier, and then our tool guide, that green button that was up on the front page of the website. Those are both here for your convenience. So if you're in here, you're doing the location search, you're not sure what's going on, you can just click on over to our guide here and get some, quick information on how to use this. We also have a couple of different toggles here, an open data filters toggle and a generate report toggle. And there are some tooltips that accompany these. Every time you see one of these question marks in a bubble, that is a tooltip. So if you hover over it, you will get some information about what this toggle is going to do for you and how you can use it. This is our data filter and map layer menu, and it's telling us, hey, this is how you set the variables that you're interested in. This is our generate report toggle, and this is going to tell us how we can access the report generation, as well as give us a hot link to our data dictionaries, which we're going to want when we download some raw climate data. So while we have our default data layers populated, let's take a look at some of the outputs that we can get from the tool. We have the option to pull out a PDF of just the current variables. And so again, that's that default set of heating and cooling degree days, as well as our maximum average temperature and our change over time. And if I click on that, that's what I'll get. But I can also pull all of the data that ClimRR offers for my particular grid cell here. So if I click on PDF All Variables Summary Report, I'm going to get a PDF view of all of this information. This is a 2-page view here that's going to contain all of the fields that we have available for that particular grid cell. It's also going to give us some information about the community that that grid cell falls in. So we can see the coordinates here where we clicked on the map. We can see that it's located in DuPage County, and then we can get some information about our community characteristics. So population over the age of 65, for example, mobile homes as a percentage of total housing. And this information is, again, coming from our friends at FEMA and the Resilience Analysis and Planning tool. And I'm going to show you one of those layers in just a minute, but I do want to talk about this tool for 1 second. And that's because the Resilience Analysis and Planning tool offers this Community Resilience Challenges Index, which gives us some context on how much challenges a community might face when it comes to its resiliency in the face of an emergency. And we'll take a look at that in just a second. This is the dark mode view of our PDF. I can also do a printer-friendly light mode view if I want to take this with me and print it out. So we can just toggle between these two. And then I can hit download, or I can hit print. So if I download it, I'm going to save it to my computer. If I hit print, I'm going to print it out and take it with me. All right, I'm going to close this. I'm going to move back over to my generate report toggle, and I'm going to just note for you all again that that CSV option is also available, as well as that hot link to the data dictionary that's going to explain the field names that we're using here. All right. Now we're going to move on over to our open data filters and map layers menu. If I open this up, I'm greeted with sort of 2 little boxes here, our data filters box and our map layers box. Again, if I hover over these tooltips, we're going to get some information about what we're seeing here. We're going to get some hot links to our data glossary and things like that. And we're also going to get some information about just exactly what this is doing. So right now I'm still zoomed into DuPage County, which is where I did my location search from, but I'm going to actually grab my map and I'm just going to zoom out to the entire United States because I'm zoomed in on one grid cell right here. And I can come over here and I can start with my data filters. So again, we're on that default temperature data filter, and instead I want to move this on over to something else. So let's take a look at heat index, for example. Now, when I click on this, you're going to see my charts change and you're going to see my tables change here with our heat index value information. You're also going to see that I have the option to select a season. Right now we're in summer, which because we're talking about heat index, I'm going to keep it on summer, but you can use that drop down to toggle on annual or other seasonal winter, spring, autumn configurations here. I want to pause for just a minute and point out that all I'm doing with this top box here is changing data filters. I'm not turning map layers on and off. I'm just updating the charts and I'm just updating the table. When I move on down to my map layers view, however, this is where I can start turning things on and off in our map. I have this blank map here, and I have all of these different options under heat index, and I have all of these different options that show me the change over time of those heat index projections. But if I keep scrolling, I'm going to get back to our friends at Wrapped, and I'm going to see some of these resilience layers, and I'm going to see some of the infrastructure layers that inform what's going on in my community. If I click on our CRCI layer here, you can see that I'm going to get a map of the United States that is coded from yellow to blue. And this is going to give us some information where dark blue means this community has the highest challenges to resilience, and light blue or light yellow means that this community has fewer challenges to resilience. But this is really nice to give us context about what is going on in our community and how they might respond to, for example, a natural disaster, a heat disaster, or a heat emergency, something along those lines. A legend pops up when I turn this map layer on and off. If I were to turn on another map layer, let's say an infrastructure layer, it's also going to pop up in my legend. I can still zoom in and out. I can still pan around, or I can, sort of move back here to my full view of the United States. If I click on a layer again, it will go away, but I'm scrolling back up to show you that as I turned those layers on and made them active, they appear up top here in blue, so you kind of know that these are your active layers. All right, I'm going to turn off our law enforcement and our CRCI layer here. I still have my little dot on DuPage County because that's where I was looking before. But let's get back to our blank slate map and start looking at our heat index layers. We can take a look at the different emission scenarios. And again, if you want some more information about those emission scenarios, check out our Learn tab up here. But we can take a look at again, we're looking at summer, so seasonal max heat index at the mid-century mark for RCP 8.5 emission scenario. And we're seeing here that we're seeing some really high heat index data here. We're seeing temperatures or heat index temperatures of over 145 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty high. That's pretty high. I wouldn't want to be sitting there in 145 degree Fahrenheit heat index values. I can turn, so again, I have this blue layer here. I can turn it off. I can turn it back on. But we also have some information on change. So it's interesting, right, to understand what the heat index might be at that mid-century mark. But what does that mean? What is the context of that? Let's look at the change. So we can look at the difference between that RCP 8.5 change, and we can see where that's really providing us maybe some information on change. If I zoom into the Gulf, that's where we're going to see some of our darker layers. And if I come back up to check on exactly what it is I have turned on, I'm going to see historical to mid-century RCP 8.5. Maybe it's not that significant of a change as I thought it would be. I can then turn this back off and kind of come down and toggle on some different layers. We can look at seasonal maximums. All right, now here's where we start seeing a story. We've got some higher summer maximums going on here, and we can zoom back out to see the entire United States and see where we might have some pretty significant change going on. I can also look at the days with heat index over the 95 degree Fahrenheit mark. If I turn that on, I can see that. If I turn on then 105, I can see that right over the top. I can keep going, take a look at 115 degrees Fahrenheit and then 125 degrees Fahrenheit. And I can turn those all on and off as needed. Again, they all pop up in my legend here. So as I turn these layers on and off, they come on in the legend. And I do want to point out that we just deployed this legend this morning. We had a very similar webinar yesterday, and that was one of the first pieces of feedback we got was, hey, the legend's not where I need it to be. Can you please put this in? And so we were able to deploy that this morning. What that means, right, is again, I'm going to encourage you to visit our mailbox, CCRDS at anl.gov, and leave us feedback. Wherever it's feasible, we're going to try to incorporate your feedback. We need this tool to be usable for folks. We want this to be something that you can use to take action with, to do your planning with, to put together your presentations, your grants, whatever it is. And if it's not usable, then we haven't done our job. So please, please, please give us your feedback. CCRDS at anl.gov. All right, I'm going to stop here because I do want to make sure that you all get a chance to hear about a really unique case study that's happening in Idaho. But I want to thank you all for coming along with me as I took you on a tour of the new ClimR beta. There's a lot more to see, so I hope you're going to dig in on your own, check out these area of interests and all of our other data layers. We have precipitation, we have fire weather, but I'll turn it over to Jess Vellante with AT&T. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for that awesome walkthrough. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm in the corporate responsibility group at AT&T, and I manage a team of data scientists who work tirelessly to deploy the climate data that Tom and Carmella talked about earlier. And we use that data to deliver insights to AT&T engineers and network designers who are working to make our infrastructure more resilient to climate impacts. So today I want to hit on three things. One, why is AT&T investing in climate resilience solutions like the Climate Risk and Resilience Portal? Two, what have we as a company done with this climate data? And three, what are some ways that you can use this data to enhance the preparedness of your own community? So I'll dive into a case study. So first, why are we involved in this project? If you look outside your window right now, chances are you will see a piece of AT&T infrastructure, wires, or what we call cables, perhaps are strung from pole to pole down your street. You might see metal boxes on the grass, which serve as connection points for our fiber. Most obviously, you see cell towers. And most importantly, you see buildings called our central offices, which are a vital component of our telecommunications networks. In order for us to provide seamless connectivity, we need to prepare for extreme scenarios like 90-mile-per-hour winds that can topple trees onto our cables. We need to prepare for intense rainfall that could flood facilities that have expensive equipment, or wildfires that can burn or limit access to our facilities. This is why years ago, we invested in this project at Argonne to produce climate data that allows us to better understand the challenges ahead and be able to prioritize hardening projects that can reduce the risk of extreme weather impacting our network. So how do we use this data at AT&T? My team every day looks at maps, and those maps contain little dots that represent AT&T facilities across the United States. We then layer on the climate data that you've previewed today to understand where it's projected to see an increase of perhaps fire danger or flooding due to climate conditions. So, for example, if we see there's a high probability that a location of interest could see more severe flooding, let's say 3 or 4 feet, we can take action and put floodgates on the doors of that building. We can elevate critical equipment, perhaps put it on the second floor. We can also put power backup options like generators in case the power goes out. Now, equally as important are identifying locations that are not at risk. So we don't waste our money fortifying locations that moving forward are not as vulnerable to climate change. So this is what climate-informed decision-making looks like. And this was a really important shift that we made internally at our company, where we not only considered historical data, so which facilities perhaps flooded in the past, but now looking forward and examining sites that are vulnerable in the future to climate change impacts. So finally, I want to give you an example of how you can use data to spur action within your community or your organization. So last summer, AT&T and the Idaho Office of Emergency Management collaborated to incorporate ClimR's data into Idaho's hazard mitigation plan. Now, for those of you who are not in the emergency manager community, I'm going to take a beat just to describe what a hazard mitigation plan is. This is a report that's developed by a state or a local municipality, a tribal community, or territorial government that documents natural hazards, so flooding, wildfires, hurricanes, etc., that have the potential to threaten that community. In the past, these plans normally included historical data as a means of anticipating future hazards. But as of April of 2023, the plans must include future conditions. So now I want to turn to the next slide to share what did we find. What you'll see if you look at Idaho's most updated plan, posted in Q4 of 2023, several escalating challenges, including increasing precipitation. You'll see a greater percentage of the state facing dangerous fire weather conditions. You'll see nearly half of the state facing increasingly dangerous temperatures. So the purpose of documenting these challenges is to ultimately identify strategies to mitigate them. And these are documented in the plan. So now I want to double click on heat on the next slide. So here you'll see that over time, summers in the Boise area are getting increasingly hot, which you know by the darkening color as you move from left to right. This creates risks for vulnerable populations, homeowners who don't have air conditioning, those who are unhoused, and seniors who are most prone to heat stress. Using the data layers from the Climate Risk and Resilience Portal, as well as the wrapped tool that Carmella talked about, we were able to pinpoint which neighborhoods have larger populations of older adults who will be at risk. So on the next slide, you're going to see a map, and the communities that have, or the census tracts that have higher concentrations of older adults are the purple ones. So this can empower an emergency manager to make climate-informed decisions about where to place cooling shelters. So that census tract that's on the left-hand side is really the most optimal to place a shelter because that is where you have the greatest concentration of vulnerable residents. So to conclude, climate resilience is a global imperative. Anyone on this call is bought into that premise. Solutions like the Climate Risk and Resilience Portal can help us to better prepare for the challenges ahead. We have to work together and we have to work fast. So now I'm going to turn it over for the final Q&A.
Great, Jess, thanks for a great presentation. Thanks to Carmi also for your presentation as well, and walking us through all the great new features on Climber. We're bumping up right against the time. We've had a very lively Q&A window and Q&A chat going on, and I think we will probably just reserve a couple of minutes here to answer questions in the chat window, but don't have time for live questions and Q&A here at the end of our webinar. I want to respect everybody's time. So having said that, thank you for attending our event today, and I want to thank Quentin Cummings from FEMA, Jess Flante from AT&T, and my colleague here at Argonne, Carmella Burdi, for your presentations. And of course, I'd like to thank you all for joining us here today. We've had over 250 people join us on the webinar today and about 450 on the webinar yesterday. So clearly a lot of interest in the tool and getting access to free climate data about future impacts across the United States. I want to remind you that we will send you a recording of today's webinar soon. And if you have any questions in the meantime, or you'd like to learn more about ways to partner with Argonne, ways to make Climber better, give us your feedback so that we can continue to incorporate that and try to make Climber the best tool available to provide this type of data. You can email us at ccrds@anl.gov. Again, that's ccrds@anl.gov. Thanks again for joining us, and this concludes our webinar.